Last night I finished A Plague Tale Requiem after putting off playing the series for a while, and eventually just diving into both games almost back to back. Let me tell you, playing the last third or so of this game was definitely not the right call during a bad week. I woke up this morning about an hour earlier than usual, and I'm certain it was due to some immense underlying feeling of grief, because this series was literally the first thing on my mind. The games centre around the de Runes, a noble family in 14th century France whose youngest son, 5-year-old Hugo, inherits a deadly bloodline known as the Prima Macula. The Macula holds dominion over plague-ridden rats responsible for causing the 6th century Justinian plague, and now threatens to emerge in full form to devastate Europe. When powerful forces hear about the Macula's power, they ransack the de Rune estate, killing Hugo's father and forcing him and his older sister Amicia to flee, constantly trying to find a cure for his condition and survive to see another day. The first game, Innocence, was a heartbreaking experience filled with all the death and misery you'd expect from a game set during the Great Plague, but it concluded on a cautiously optimistic note. The family was reunited, and it seemed like they were heading off into brighter pastures. The second game, Requiem, delved into dark and hopeless territory early on, but I still expected things would move towards slightly sunnier tones as the game worked towards its conclusion. I would have felt a bit let down if we had a truly happy ending for all of the characters, but maybe they'd strike a balance somewhere in the middle, a brief light in the dark for what is presumably the conclusion to the series. Then Requiem just didn't do that, it just said no. The characters swing from dilemma to dilemma, either caused by their own actions or forced upon them by forces completely out of their control. Every time a problem is solved, there's only a brief respite before a new one rears its head. There are multiple occasions from the halfway point onward where it seems like Amicia will finally be able to escape to sort out her brother's condition with him together in peace. And then something happens to drag her and the rest of the cast right back into the world of misery they seem destined to inhabit. So much of the game feels unfair. It's not fair that after making plans to live out the rest of their days with their family in a mountainside lodge, Amicia and Hugo's mother is killed by the leader of a cult worshipping Hugo, triggering immense trauma in the boy and pushing him further into the arms of the curse. It's not fair that shortly after the group escapes from this cult, they're pursued, boarded, and shipwrecked. It's not fair that after all this time we've spent with these characters, the only way to end Hugo's out-of-control curse and prevent the plague from consuming the world is to euthanize him. Every moment after the poor boy's death, I found myself clamoring for a sense of redemption to the narrative. I just wanted more game, another chapter, another interactable, another little piece of lore. Any interpretation or any bit of wiggle room, no matter how much of a stretch it was, to make me feel better about what just happened. But the miraculous panacea I was looking for never arrived. In the end, only 3 of the main cast remain alive, and the only purpose Amicia has left is in trying to discover where Hugo's millennia-old curse will arise next, and try all that she can to make sure its carrier doesn't meet the same fate as her brother. She seems confident that the task before her is one she can handle, that her experience has prepared her for this endeavour. But by this point, it's impossible for me to fully believe her. Too much has gone wrong, too many happy endings torn away, cruelly, for me to believe that the survivors of this series will prosper after its conclusion. The after-credits scene, where a slow pan along the body of a modern-day inheritor of the curse is accompanied by the hiss of a ventilator, only acts as an ambiguous coda to the story, with not even a shred of hope to be found. It serves only as evidence that the curse afflicting Amicia and her family can't be destroyed, and survives in perpetuity, waiting patiently to inflict itself upon future generations. The end of the game made me feel as though everything was for naught. The thousands of innocents killed, the trauma inflicted upon the survivors, the struggles and victories that all led inexplicably to tragedy. As Amicia struggled against adversities, so did we as players, not only guiding her actions and defeating opposition, but shouldering the emotional burden that the story and its characters passed on to us. We spent so much time with these characters, but for what? What's left for us after playing this? What's left is exactly what awaited the survivors of the game's historical inspiration. The Black Death carved a path through Europe indiscriminately. Plague cares little for the age, social class, or moral fibre of the individuals it slaughters. It certainly doesn't care about the Daruns, whose noble blood, rather than being an indication that they are born to rule and thrive, is ultimately the reason why they and everyone they came into contact with were doomed. In the same way, the Prima Macula curse doesn't care if the characters or you wanted a happy ending. It's a nigh untamable force of nature and will do exactly as it wants, cutting through as many people as it pleases to reach its fated destination. It's for this reason that, even though I wouldn't say I liked how the Plague Tale games ultimately ended, I can say that they have succeeded in doing what they set out to do. The story they tell is emotionally crippling and unrewarding, but that's exactly the point. A plague tale is both a tale about the plague and a tale that emulates the plague in its very essence. It couldn't care less about what you want from it, submerging you in jet black sorrow that seeps through to your core, an affliction that changed me and will change anyone else that plays it forever.